So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Outdoor Recreation Northern Ireland training event online. And today we're looking at the GreenspaceNI Map, Data Applications, a Beginner's Guide to Unleashing its Full Potential. So that's a very exciting title, and hopefully today's session fulfills and lives up to that title. Just to give you a bit of an introduction, hopefully my slides will move on. There we go. So I'm Elizabeth Annett. I am a communications training specialist for Outdoor Recreation Northern Ireland. And this is one of the projects that I oversee that kind of fits into the field of insights, so providing insights to the sector to help and direct us going forward. Just in terms of a bit of background, I'm sure most of you already know about the GreenspaceNI Map, but it is provided so that public bodies, community groups and landowners will have insights as to where accessible green space is needed most and the best routes to connect people to their local green space. So that's really the purpose behind this map. And really what we're hoping for is that stakeholders will be enabled to work towards this ambition of everyone having accessible quality green space within their local communities. And so this webinar is designed for you to be able to use the GreenspaceNI Map to positively shape the future of green spaces and trails going forward. And following the successful launch of the map, this is an opportunity for you to really delve deeper into the data and its applications. So this is the beginner's session, so you don't need any previous GIS knowledge, just basic computer skills. So hopefully that reassures you. In terms of just some basic housekeeping, we envisage this training event lasting between 60 and 75 minutes. It will be recorded, and the aim of that is to put the recording onto our website afterwards so that if there's something that you didn't quite capture today, you can go back and re-watch that recording and relearn what was taught today. Just to help with bandwidth, can you just turn off your mics and your cameras during the presentations? That will just help with people's sort of smooth delivery of this session. And use the chat pane to put in your questions and your reflections this morning. We will be closely watching that chat pane. So if there's something that comes into your mind during one of the presentations, throw in that question. We will come to it towards the end of the session whenever we have a Q&A. And then during that final Q&A, if you actually do have a question or you want to raise something, you can put up your virtual hand and we will bring you in. And then at that point, you can put on your camera and your mic. Can I just maybe ask our two presenters today, Emma and John, just to quickly introduce yourselves? So maybe, John, can we come to you first? Maybe just say a little bit about your name, role, and your input into this project.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here. I suppose I've had the great pleasure of being involved right from the start in the GreenspaceNI Map. I was the sole GIS person for initially, where we put together the sort of layers we would use, how we would create the map, and then I suppose brought people together and to shape some requirements and then bring it to life, really. And then Emma joined me, which was fantastic. Really, I think we've made a good team on this, and yeah, that's been my role, really, the creation of it, and I suppose support for Emma. She's created a lot of the materials we're going to show you today.
Lovely, thanks, Sean. Emma, do you want to say something? Although I would say most people probably know you on the call.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today and for coming along to hear about GreenspaceNI again. As John and Elizabeth have said, I'm the GIS technician working for Outdoor Recreation Northern Ireland, and I have been working alongside John and Elizabeth to pull this all together. A lot of my role has been the on the ground, day-to-day polygons and lines for the last couple of years. So it's good to see the map at the stage that it's at now, and be able to tell you all more about it.
Lovely, thank you, Emma. I'll be handing back to Emma very soon. Just in terms of our running order for today, so this session will cover, I suppose, three key aspects. So number one, what is GreenspaceNI? So we're just going to recap sort of the key elements of the current GreenspaceNI map. So that includes the green space layer, the green space access points and the off-road trails. And this will include information on how the layers were created, how they're updated and what information is gathered. And then the second part, we will move on to look at the GreenspaceNI Map Viewer. So this is one of the resources that we have created for you, and it's really easy access. I suppose it's aimed more towards community groups, and it allows for a range of map viewing and analytical functions to be carried out. So during the session, we'll demonstrate some of those functions and applications, from integrating the data to adding your own and creating outputs. And then we will move on to look at the GreenspaceNI dashboard. So this is the second resource that we have created for you, which conveys GreenspaceNI Map information using intuitive and interactive data visualizations. So here we'll tell you about the layers in the dashboard, what they show, and how you can use the full capabilities and produce really interesting statistics. We will also show you our new feedback system and how you can use it to help us enhance the data within the map. And then finally, as I said earlier, we'll have a Q&A before we close. So just in terms of a very kind of brief background to the project, it would be remit of me to not mention the role of DARA and DFI to making this possible. So they have provided grant aid investment to support the work of Strategic Outdoor Recreation Group. And really, it was their funding that has made this map possible. So a big thank you to both DARA and DFI. And I think the importance of having this really high value map is not to be underestimated, and it is supposed to be an analytical and planning tool that we all use, and that really helps us to understand people's proximity and accessibility to nature, and how we can better connect people to the green spaces and trails that we do have. Now, the importance of this has been captured within the target that's being proposed within the new environment strategy, and that is already within the Northern Ireland Environment Statistics Report. And that is that we see this annual increase in the percentage of households within 400 metres of quality accessible green space of at least 2 hectares. So this all fits into being able to monitor progress towards it. So it really does make a real world impact, and that's the importance of it. In terms of the purpose of the map, it is so that we can monitor progress towards this 400 metre target, and that is within important strategies. And it's really something that's supposed to be used by our public bodies, by community groups, by our landowners to shape the future of green spaces for good. And you can do that by undertaking lots of useful analysis and producing really interesting insights that help you plan where green spaces should go, where trails should be going. And you can overlay that with lots of demographic data sets as well. So we'll be showcasing some of that through this session. And then the map is available on various platforms, so SpatialNI, Open Data NI, and where we feel it's kind of appropriate for consumers on Outmore NI as well. So I think probably at this point, I might hand over to you, Emma. I'll flick on to the next slide, Emma, so you can talk about our data suppliers.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. So as I'd mentioned earlier, I've been doing a lot of the day-to-day GIS work behind the GreenspaceNI Map, and you'll all probably know me from my emails and hounding you from data. So just once again, thank you to everybody who has provided us with data for the GreenspaceNI Map this far. Next slide, please, Elizabeth. So just to recap before we get started into the applications of what the GreenspaceNI Map actually is. This is just showing here the green spaces and trails across Northern Ireland. And the next slide will show a bit of a breakdown of this into the green space layer. So the green space layer contains just under 100,000 hectares of publicly accessible green space. And we split this down into 5 categories. So we have woodland, parks and gardens, open country, amenity green spaces, and nature reserves. You can see there that woodland accounts for the most, and it's just a good point to note that it's all publicly accessible green space. So all these sites are available and open for people to visit. We also then, on the next slide, have trails layer. So we have just under 2,000 miles of off-road trails within the map as well. This is broken down also into different types and categories. Walking trails, cycling trails, to towpaths and greenways. So that's a very brief overview of the data, and a couple of other sources that we've used on the next slide, Elizabeth. So we've also used things like Strava and All Trails to gather data for the GreenspaceNI Map, as well as using staff within outdoor recreation who helped me find data that was missing or sites that should be included. Another one that we've introduced as well is our new Survey 123 feedback system, which lives in the dashboard. So I'll show you a bit about that later on. I think for now we'll just dive straight into it, and I'll hand over to you, John, to talk about the map here.
Thank you, Emma. And I will share. Maybe you would let me know when you can see a map.
Yep, that's all good.
Good, thanks, Emma. Okay, so hello everybody again. I'm going to take you through the GreenspaceNI Map viewer, and really the functionality here and the content has been shaped by a lot of people on this call. I think it's been a really nice bit of engagement on this so far, so thank you to everyone who has been involved in that so far as well. What you see here is the map. If I first click on one of these functions over to my left, the legend, basically it shows you that everything, the green areas here are green space, the purple lines are trails. So if I click on one just on the map, it'll bring me up some information about where I've clicked. So on that location, there's a few things, and I know that because there's a little play button here. So if I click on that, there's a trail that's been selected. If I click on that, it'll toggle through the different things in that area that I clicked on, basically. So there's an area of green space, and you can see there are other and pieces of information about it as well, like who provided it to us, what it is access paid, and the accuracy of it as well. So that's just really a very quick view initially of the data. Well, one nice function I might show you here as well is the gazetteer. So as well as being able to gazetteer on addresses, you can also directly search on GreenspaceNI or the trails layers. So if I just type in just a few characters here, it'll bring me up as I type what's on the map. I think this is quite a nice example. I'm looking for Beaver Forest, and it's not in the World Gazetteer, but it is in the GreenspaceNI layer and the trails layer. You can see here. So each title at the top is the source of this information. So if I click on Beaver Playing Fields in our GreenspaceNI layer, it'll take me to there. As well, so it's quite nice. You can search directly for trails or green space as well. So I'm going to just go through these functions and show you what each of them does. What you'll notice initially is on my left here, there's a set of functions. Basically, if I click on any of these, it'll expand into this panel and put the functions up at the top. And then to get rid of this panel, I just click here and it hides it again, basically. So let me take you through some of the functions we've added in. I started with the legend. I'll move on then to the layers. So as you see, there are a selection of map layers. The only two that are turned on at the minute are green space and trails. What I'll do is just go through some of these. So if I go out, I'm going to hit the home button here, which takes me out to the whole of the province. There you go, and I'll zoom in a little bit. So the first one I'll turn on here, I might turn off our trails, is the access points to green space. So if I turn that on, it'll turn me on a point layer with those access points. These have been created really to help with the analysis that we've carried out on proximity. We needed to create access points to green space to be able to do that analysis and tell how many people live within and the various different distances of green space. If I click on one, you'll see it gives us the area of green space that it's an access point to, but also importantly here, the method it was created. So some of these have been provided by our partners in the councils. Others we've created automatically, and we'll really be going through an ongoing process of hopefully getting to these being all, the actual locations of these points. So you see if they say intersection here, that's been created with a bit of analysis that really just intersects a trail with a piece of green space to say, well, it's most likely there's an access point here. So that's the access points. I'm going to turn on some other layers that we've pre-cooked these layers because we thought they would be useful for people too. So what I'm turning on here is by council area, the percentages of households within 400 meters, 1K and 2K off an area of green space. And what we can do with these layers as well is we can make them transparent. So if I go to here, then I can make that layer transparent. I can do that for any of the map layers I put onto the map. Let me just get rid of that. A couple other layers that we have down here are some analysis to census output area. So census output area are some geographies provided by NISRA, and basically these are a really good statistical geography for comparison because roughly the same amount of people live in each census output area. So that's what these polygon areas you see here are. If I click on one, it'll tell me the number of households that live within 1K of an area of green space within that census output area. And basically the darker the area, the better the proximity in that area. We have another one here. So we have two of these layers. One is proximity based on a 1 kilometre walking distance and the other's 400 metres. So if I turn that one on, I might just go over to here and show you another of our functions, which is swipe. So if I click on one of these layers, then we can do a nice comparison between these layers. So I'm looking at the accessed by 400 meters and 1 kilometer and can swipe and sort of compare and contrast. And you can do that basically for any layers within the map as well. So if I turn those two off, and I'll show you one we created as a bit of fun, but actually I think it's quite a useful and nice one as well. So this is just a regular set of 1 kilometer hexagons for the whole province, and we coloured these again according to the proximity to green space in each of them, and the darker are basically have better proximity. So if I click on one, see in that little 1K hexagon, no households have 400 meter proximity to green space, whereas here, which is a darker one in Belfast, there's 68% of households here. So it's quite a nice, useful one as well. And then finally, one we put it in again, we thought would be useful is this is the information from NISRA around health deprivation, so I can make that transparent as well. This is again the super output area, but just generally shows the health deprivation in each super output area as well. So that's the different layers. What I might do as well is if I turn on my green space layer, I'm going to show you how you can add layers into this map as well. So if I go over to into this function, this lets me add data. So if I first of all go over to a file, and what I might actually do first is go to a little bookmark I have. So if there's a little scenario I'm going to show you here, if I go to a bookmark I have for Castle Welland, and you can create bookmarks within this viewer to wherever you want. I'm considering, or I'd like to construct a community trail in this area. So if I add in some data that I've collected myself, then I can use the map viewer, I suppose, to build a case for that trail. So what I'm going to do is add in some data I've created for this. This is Bunkers Hill near Castle Welland. Where would you get the data then to bring into this? And basically this takes in some formats, shapefile, CSV, KML or GPX. So as someone perhaps without a geographical information system, there are many apps, say for example for phones, that you could use to create these files, basically walk up the proposed route, create the file, and then you can bring them into the map viewer, such as there's also Google Earth lets you create KML files. So if I then go to my layers, it's created a little layer for me for this Bunkers Hill trail, and I can now use some of the other functions in the map, I suppose, to try and build up my case for a trail in this area. If I turn on, for example, the health rank in that area, you know, I can see, well, what is the health deprivation? Again, as I say, to help build up that case. So I'll turn off that one. And I might want to annotate the map with some information as well if I want to share this with others. So I'm going to draw a little area here. I'm going to turn on area measurement and perimeter measurement, and maybe put on an area here. Maybe I want to create this as a car park to the trail. I can create some text as well and say, you know, trail starts here, and add that in as well, so I can annotate my trail information, and then I can do a print of that as well, of really any information on the map I can print out, but I can print out a map of my trail. Well, there's quite a lot of different formats you can print this to as well, whatever size you want, and different image and PDF formats too. And that'll, in the background, I can do other things while that's creating, but in the background, it'll create a little map for me. And some examples of PDFs that I've created just this morning are shown in these other tabs here as well that I can print to. So I'm going to clear my annotation that I've just created. And I'm going to show you some of the other functions that I could usefully use as well. There's a really nice one here, which is what's in my area, basically what pieces of green space are in my area. So again, to help build up the case, I suppose, for this trail, if I click on that green space near me icon, I can click on this to set my locations, to say I'm here. And what this will give me is all the trails or green space within a distance of where I've just hit. The default is 400 meters, but I can extend that as well. I can bring that out and it'll give me then the areas of green space and trails within that area, within that point. And I can expand these, as you see, as well. So if I want to see all the trails, there's 24 trails within that distance that I've set of that point, and there they all are listed there. And I can zoom to any one of those as well if I want. Some other useful functions in here. By the way, what I can do, of course, is if I zoom in a little bit, I can change the base map I'm using. So I can go from, I can use this little base map gallery, go from the Ordnance Survey large scale information, as this is called, to aerial photography. And this is, super Ordnance Survey aerial photography as well. It's really, really nice quality across the whole province. So there you go, and I can add in different base maps. And I can also measure. So if I want to go in a little bit more into that trail, I can measure various points of it as well. So if I go back to my layers, first of all, I'm going to turn off my trails layer and just look at the data I've added. And I can do a little measure here. I want to measure a line. I can set the units I want to do it in. So if I set it to line and meters, then I can just go and click along the trail, and it'll give me a cumulative distance as I go, and then just double click to finish for any point of the trail, or I can measure areas with that as well. And let me see, I'll then go to, so that's the sort of scenario of, using the viewer in a real sense to try and build up the case for a potential trail. So if I clear that information, I'm going to zoom back out to my home, and I'm going to show you a very useful function here, which lets me select data and extract it if I want. So again, it's in, you'll see each of the functions here are separate functions, like add data, green space near me. But this one here really groups together any remaining functions into one group. So that's why these ones are all in their own little tab. And if I click select here, this will let me select from my trails some data and export it if I want to. So I can select what types of information I want to collect. Is it trails? Is it green space? Is it access points? So let's say I just want to create some or export some green space information. I can select that by polygon, and let's go down to beautiful for mana, and I can say select by rectangle and draw an area. It's selected those green space polygons for me, and then I can export that to a CSV, or I can even, a nice little thing here is I can look at statistics for just those ones I've selected, which is quite nice as well. And then I can clear those off. So you can also export data too. There's also a nice way to view data as well. If I go back to the layer list, so you don't need to view the layer always as a map. You can also go to an attribute table for any of the layers, and it'll show them as a table as well. There's also the ability to filter this table by the map extent. So as I sort of pan and zoom around the map, or maybe use the gazetteer to go to my area of choice, it'll constantly update this table just to what I see on the map. And then I can click one here, and it'll zoom directly to that as well. So another nice way to navigate the map. And then to get rid of those, it's just this to hide the table as well. And I think that leaves me with a couple of more things to show you. If I maybe zoom out as well, probably a nice way to show this feature. We have a trails summary and a green space summary. So if I turn that on, then as I pan and zoom my map, it'll sort of summarize the trails on the map. So it'll tell me the number of trails and also the total length of those trails as well. And if I go to then, I have a green space equivalent of that too. So again, which is doing a very similar thing. It'll count up the areas of green space on my area map and the total hectareage of them as well. So that's probably the most of the functions I think I've shown on the left hand side. Then over on the right, probably the only thing I haven't shown yet is, let me just hide that, is we have some help information here. So over on the right, I've got print, as I've shown you before, on swipe, but also a little help screen here, which really just takes you through each of the icons on the map and what they do. And I think that is, yeah, pretty much what I wanted to show you. There's also actually a little nice thing here on the bottom left of this map. If you did want to get the exact coordinates for location, you can just click on this and click on the coordinates. Then you can copy and paste this as well, which is quite a handy thing too. So I think, yeah, that's the main things I wanted to show. And I'll probably stop sharing and hand back to you, Emma.
That's great. Thanks very much, Sean. I'll just jump over there to show you about the dashboard. So if I go in here,
but sorry, Emma, just maybe before we go on to the dashboard, I just think there's a few questions here in the chat pane just to do with the map viewer. Shall we cover those first? Because they are particular, and I think probably the answers will lie between the both of you as well. So Rosie Irwin has put in a couple of questions. The first one relates to access points. So is the point exact or approximate location of a gate, style, etc.? Is there more info like type of access point? So really that's around, what kind of information are we gathering currently on access points? And I suppose we can also sort of say something about our future plans. Emma, that's probably one for you, is it?
Yep, I'll take that one. Yep, so at the minute, the only information we have on access points is that it is an access point and what the green space is that it's accessing, as well as John had mentioned, the method of collecting the data. So whether that was supplied data, intersecting using some GIS functions, or manually created points. We don't at the minute have details on the types of access point that it is. However, we do plan to enhance these layers. This definitely isn't a project that's just been created and is now finished. It's a project that has been created as a start, and we will be building on it in the future. So that's definitely some information that we will be adding in. You may have noticed as well that the access points are just for green space at the minute. We're currently working on creating a trail access point layer, which was a very useful observation that was made by our funders in DFI, that we haven't used access points for trails, but that's a very valuable resource to have. So that's one that we have started to create as well. So yes, not at the minute, we don't have that data, but we will have hopefully soon.
Thank you, Emma. So yes, we are definitely building in more data. I suppose that's where collaboration with our partners and stakeholders makes all the difference. John, the other question from Rosie probably is one for you. So will the command to print map automatically add a key, and can you annotate the size of the map to print?
Yes, I was actually just trying that out to be sure of my answer. And yes, there are a range of map layouts. And if you select something like A4 or A3, portrait or landscape layouts, you can add your own title. It'll put in a legend, and also you can change the size as well. There's an advanced button you can hit that lets you change the size of the output image as well.
Thank you, John. So Michael Savage has put in a couple of questions. So his first one was, how does the system deal with a section of open access to the green space? So this is an example where there is no fence, say, for example, alongside a public road, so where we maybe say that the green space is porous. So what's our current approach to that?
For those green space, sorry, those green space sites, we have done an automatic analysis through GIS to create an access point every 100 meters. Because we know that those sites, you can get into them anywhere. So we just have multiple access points around the site.
Excellent. And then Emma, on Michael's second question, so to do with the duplication of trails, that was something that we noticed just leading up to the launch, that there were some trails that were duplicated. Do you want to sort of say something about the process that we have gone through over the summer period to correct that?
Yep. I spent a bit of time over summer going into the trails layer and tidying it up a bit. It mightn't look like that from the outside, but once you get into the data, you can turn on some filters which will remove the duplication essentially. So what I've done is create an infrastructure layer and what I'm calling at the minute a routes layer. So the routes layer will be a layer that includes duplications of bits of trail that overlap each other. Two routes might cross the same path in the one section, and there's no real way that we can remove that, but we can remove it from our overall statistics. So that's where the infrastructure layer comes in. So in order to create this, I have pretty much merged all of the trails across Northern Ireland to give a figure of just under 2,000 miles of trail, which is just one line for each section of path, i.e. the infrastructure across Northern Ireland. So this can be interrogated through the attribute table a bit more, as John had shown there through the map viewer. So you can have a flick through that and see what's infrastructure and what is route. But if anybody has some advice or some information on making the duplications a bit less obvious, or maybe a more enhanced trails layer for their area, that would be a great help for us.
Thank you, Emma. And then Teresa O'Hare makes a valid point to say adding access type could be a really useful thing for emergency responses. So again, we can bear that in mind going forward. And I think maybe Sophie's question there maybe is a nice segue onto handing back to you, Emma, to talk about the dashboard, because her question relates to the ability to filter trails by different uses, e.g. to show routes that you can cycle on. So maybe, Emma, if I maybe hand back to you, that's probably something you will cover under the dashboard.
Yep. So we do have multiple uses within our trails layer, and you can filter it by the use. Part of my enhancement of the trails layer over the summer has been to make that a bit easier to filter those things out. So through the attribute table, you can select, there's a field where you can select walking, and cycling, walking, cycling, equestrian, multi-use trails, or just one of the above. So that attribute is now there for all of the trails within the layer. That can be done through the map viewer, as John has showed there to us this morning.
Right, well, Emma, I'll hand back to you just to say to attendees, do keep on firing in your questions into the chat pane as we go through the next part of the session. It probably is best that we kind of break it up to make it simpler, particularly for our presenters, actually, because some of these questions are quite specific to various aspects of the map viewer and the dashboard. So Emma, I'll pass back to you.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. So I'll start from here, which is maybe a step back from what John has shown. So once you visit the GreenspaceNI page through the website, it'll take you to various different options where you can click both the map viewer and the dashboard. So this is the one for the dashboard, which takes me to this page within ArcGIS. So all I do is click Open Dashboard, and it takes me to our dashboard. The functionality of the actual map is the same as what John has shown. So you can zoom in and out using different functions. You can go in, you can click on an area of green space, it'll show you some information about it. I click over here, show me some information about the trails. You can see here there's more than one option available, which means that there's more than one layer. So we can use the arrows here to scroll through, and we can see different types. So this is a trail, and we can see who's provided it and what sort of trail it is. So there we can see as well the type of trail, and this is telling us that it's a mountain bike trail and the length of it as well. Within this then we have our functions along the top here, so we can search, and this works in the same way as the map viewer. We can search an address or a place or an area of green space or trail. This house function here takes us back to the original extent of the map, which is this one here. Just if we get lost in green space or trails, we can easily zoom back out and find ourselves again. It's very easily done, and this is our legend. So this just shows the layers that are activated currently within the map. So I'll show you just when I activate another layer how it adds in, but these are the ones that we have turned on at the minute. If I go into our layers list here, this little eye icon means that once it's visible like this, it means that the layer is turned on. These ones here are turned off, so that eye has a little line through it. So if I turn on another layer, this is our super output areas, with both 400 meter and 1 kilometer proximity. This works exactly the same as the map viewer. I can click on an area and it'll tell me some statistics about that. And then if we go back into here, into our layers list, we can see some information about what this is actually showing us. So you can see here that darker areas have more addresses, or a better percentage of addresses within 400 meters, and the lighter areas have a lower percentage of addresses. So all these layers will also appear within the legend once you turn them on. Similarly to the map viewer, we can also change the base map. So within this, we've many different options, including AUSNI Ortho, as John had showed as well. So we can change to whatever we desire through there. The dashboard is very much just giving you information. The map viewer is probably more angled towards actual analysis, or you can use the different functions and draw functions to add on your own data or add in other data from other sources. This dashboard just shows you what there is within our data that we've added in for you. Some of the other functions around here, so we have the green space area within the map currently. So this just shows at your current extent what green space there is within the map. So if we zoom in, we can see that that figure will change. And also, if we use over here on the left-hand side, this is a pie chart showing green space by type. So these both work together. I can click on public open spaces and it'll just show me, if I maybe turn off my trails layer, you see that a bit better. So it'll just show me that specific type. I can click on all of these different layers and you can see how that changes as I go through them. To remove that filter then, you just click it again and it resets to the normal. This figure shows the amount of trails within the map. If I turn my trails layer back on, as I said earlier, we did have a bit of work to do over the summer there to refine this layer a bit more. The eagle-eyed among you might remember the figure that we showed for trails at our launch event was a lot higher. So this figure has gone down due to refinement, but it's a lot more accurate and reflects a lot better what is actually on the ground. And we have some other interesting statistics here from our analysis, our phase 1 analysis, to say that 50% of households in Northern Ireland live within 400 metre service area of trails and green space. We can then look at our layers, our table here, which shows us this in a bit more of a breakdown. This just shows proximity to green space by council. So I can click on one of these options in the table and it'll zoom to that council area. And it tells us as well the breakdown of this at 400 meters. So we have percentage of households 400 meters proximity to green space, 1 kilometer and 2 kilometers. And once again, to remove that filter, we just click on the table. We also have, as one of our questions mentioned, is there an option to filter the trails by usage? And this function here allows us to do that. So we can see here that using this pie chart, we can see the breakdown of the trails, and these are all fields within the attribute table of these layers. So I can click on trail like this and it'll show me if it's a walking trail or if it's a cycling trail or a mountain bike trail or various other types. So that function is there and it's very easy to use within the layers. Some other data that we have within this dashboard as well. So a layer that John had shown, so council boundaries with proximity, we can see here darker areas have better proximity, which we can see also in our legend. We can also turn on super output areas with 400 meter and 1 kilometer proximity. And once again, we can click on any of these polygons for super output areas and it'll show us some information about this. Those of you who are into statistics and are eagle-eyed will know that there are new NISRA geographies that have been produced as a result of the recent census data zones and super data zones. We're currently still using the previous edition of the super output areas, but we do have plans to update this to the new NISRA statistics as well. So keep an eye out for that. And we might even make a nice news article out of that once we produce some more interesting maps. Over here on the left hand side, if we click on this little tab here, we can see that there's various different options that we can use to look into a bit more of the analysis of the map. So if I turn on a layer here just to show you, I can turn on deprivation rank by super output area. So this is once again using NISRA statistics, and I can use this slider here to select maybe the 100 most deprived areas. This is once again one is most deprived. There's 890 super output areas within Northern Ireland, each of them given a rank between 1 and 890. So this is just showing those most deprived areas. So we can zoom in. If I wanted to know more information about these areas, I could have a look at the map a bit closer and see, well, what's the green space proximity like within those. I can also then turn on some other layers. I can turn on these super output areas polygons, and this will show me a bit closer. I can look and see what the statistics are compared to the level of deprivation. There's some other functions here as well. We can select the health deprivation rank, also NISRA statistic, as well as areas with a low percentage of addresses within 400 meters, or if we wanted to go within 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers. Can also then select a settlement, and we have in here all the settlements and their proximity to green space. So if I go in here, I can search for any settlement within Northern Ireland. I'm going to go close to home and go for Balnahinch, which will zoom me to that area. And we can see here as well that our indicator has also changed to reflect that area on the map. So this sort of shaded area out round the settlement is the settlement development limits using NISRA data. So if I click this area, it'll bring up this information in a pop-up, which will tell me the statistics for that settlement. This exists for all settlements across Northern Ireland. So in order to do some more analysis, you can click on any of these and look at your area that you're looking at. This would work well with the example that John was showing for Bunkers Hill. If I wanted to know some more statistics about Castlewellan, I could zoom out, go into settlement development limits for Castlewellan. I can click on the area and I can see how many addresses are within 400 metres, 1 kilometre and 2 kilometre of green space within that settlement. So hopefully that all makes some sense to you. As I mentioned earlier, we have a new function which is housed over here. So this is our green space feedback survey. This just lets you give us some information if you see something within the map, within the dashboard or the map viewer that doesn't look right, or any information that you think we should add in or is inaccurate, general queries, anything. You can see the options here that we have. So you can click on any of these just to give us a bit more information about your query and leave us a email address so that we can get back to you and contact you about your questions. I think that's all from the dashboard. Maybe hand back to Elizabeth.
All right, thank you, Emma. That was really comprehensive. You can tell you guys know this like the back of your hand. I'm just glad this is being recorded, because I'm sure for some of our participants this morning, that while they're finding it interesting, they're having to learn pretty fast here. So the recording will be available on the Outdoor Recreation Northern Ireland website afterwards. So do make use of that resource. We have a few questions here relating to transport and active travel. So the first one from Claire Morris is there an option to show active travel provisions to green spaces from population hubs? For example, segregated walking, cycling access, footpath provision, single carriageway from housing developments, town centres, schools, etc. John, you're probably best placed to sort of talk about what we currently do in terms of network analysis, but also maybe potential other layers that may be out there that organisations could use to sort of help understand how they can get people safely from where they live into green spaces and trails.
I suppose on that one, I would say that if say someone doing that sort of analysis has even a spreadsheet of that information, it could be added in and overlaid on top of what we have at the moment. For example, if I just share my screen, I've just been going through the questions, and there's maybe a few I could answer just by showing a few things in the map viewer. Am I sharing again? Can you see a map?
Yep, can do.
Lovely. So what I just did while Emma was demoing there, we went through her questions, and I seen there was a really good question around being able to add in things like train station stops. So what I did was just went to data.gov, downloaded, just did a really quick search of the NIR railway network, downloaded that to my machine, and then just brought it into the map basically to show, I suppose, how easily that stuff can be added. So I just browsed to it and added it in, and here you can see if I turn that on and off, this is the TransLink rail information on the map as well. So I mean, that sort of stuff can be put in and overlaid relatively quickly and easily if it exists. But I suppose as well, we have a set of curated layers here, which if I go to here, you can see that we've added in a few here that we think may be useful for people to add in. So if I go out and zoom in a little bit, so for example, just the general deprivation data set for the province, that you could add in. We've got just council boundaries and a global land cover map based on satellite imagery, and it's sort of being created through AI, basically, that map. So those are just other layers that we thought would be useful that you can add into the map. But that's a list, that's the land cover one there. So if I go to the legend on that, that shows basically the land cover, again calculated using artificial intelligence, basically from satellite imagery. So that sort of third-party information can be overlaid and held as these curated layers for people to easily get at. So suppose if there were layers that people thought would be useful for people to add in as a reference, we can keep expanding this list. If the data is available, we can certainly add it in. I'll just turn off some of these as well and show maybe one other thing I didn't show from earlier. But again, there's a lot of spatial information in GreenspaceNI. So our data is also shared to GreenspaceNI. So we can, if I just type in green here, you can see that our 3 layers come up: green space, trails, and access points in GreenspaceNI that we can add in as well. And again, I mean, use this map viewer too, because there are lots of other spatial layers in there that can be used for comparison. For example, if I just go back to this screen, things like the sites and monuments records can be overlaid on top of, trails and green space as well, to look at, the proximity to sites and monuments as well. So I suppose lots of ways the data could be used because it's open and public, basically. Yeah, there's one other I thought I might answer as well on this. Whenever we look at the table view, someone asked a really good question around being able to filter the trails, which Emma answered, but you can also do that in the map viewer. So if I put on my trails down here and bring up my attribute table here, then if I click on options, there's a little filter, which I didn't show earlier. So I can add an expression in here to say, okay, for the trails, show me where the type is. And then if I set this to unique, it'll list out all the different types of trail. So I just select cycling trail, and then it'll list out in the table the trails that are classified as cycling. And again, I can just click on that and go to any one as well. So hopefully that helps to answer at least some of those questions that are in the chat as well. And I'll stop sharing at that point.
Thanks, John. Emma, could you maybe just explain, because I think this does relate to the transport questions, how we've done proximity analysis, both for green spaces and also for trails?
Yep. So for green space, as we've showed, we have our access points for green space. So we've used the access points to create service areas for green spaces. So at 400 meters, 1 kilometer, and 2 kilometers, and then within that we have added in the pointer data for households and selected those addresses that are within the service areas for green spaces. For trails, we have used shape preserving buffers. As I said, we haven't yet got access points layer for trails, however we are working on it. So we can update that analysis once we're finished updating the trails access points, but for now we have used shape preserving buffers, also at 400 meters, 1 kilometer, and 2 kilometers for trails. And the same process for that, then we've selected the addresses that are within those proximities.
Thank you, Emma. John, I'm just thinking there, whenever you said that we can add in other data sets, I think maybe something around public transport connectivity points might be useful. So train and bus stops, I guess, would be one protocol there.
I definitely agree, and hopefully, as you showed there are a few options on how to do that. So we can either add them in as permanent layers, so they appear on the layer list, or add them in as those curated layers that whenever you hit in add data, it could come up as one of the other layers that may be useful for people to add in.
certainly.
By the way,
And
can I answer a question I see from Jacqueline as well? So Jacqueline's asked another great question. If you add a layer in, is it available to all users? The answer is no. If you add in a layer, it'll just be for you. But I think if there's a layer you think would be useful to others, we'd be keen for you to get in touch with us, because as I say, we can add it in, into the table of contents potentially for everyone.
There's a really interesting discussion here around rural dwellers and this idea of having safe access to green space. So Teresa O'Hare talks about, if you live, say, near green space, but you have to go on a really busy road, a dangerous road, then it's not necessarily accessible, particularly if you're trying to walk maybe kids to that green space. So I suppose, there's a caveat to say that, you need to use sort of local knowledge and analysis there. There's maybe John, you can comment on this, is there kind of data sets that we can draw on in terms of type of roads and busyness of those roads?
Certainly for types, I think Michael mentioned it as well in the Ausni Fusion data. There is some that we could draw out of that and other data sets as well. Usage, I believe I think I've used in the past some DFI data that has road usage information as well, I think. So yeah, I think at least some of that's out there.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of an ongoing discussion, particularly around sort of footpaths, pavements in rural areas. It seems to be that data set isn't available yet. But if anybody in DFI, if one of our representatives online knows differently, just pop that into the chat pane. Just say if you want to come in and verbally raise a question or a comment or a reflection on what you've seen this morning, do put up your virtual hand. We've got a few more questions, however, in the chat pane, which I will just go through. So Claire Morris there says about adding in current and future planned greenway routes. I think it's maybe difficult to add in future planned greenway routes because this sort of currently shows what infrastructure we have on the ground at the moment. I think, though, there's value maybe in having some kind of planning forum that sits behind that maybe puts in planned or prospective new trails, green spaces. I think that there's value in that. And Michael Savage has another question there. I know it's more of a comment. Yes, about trying to figure out where there's pavements in rural areas, which yes, that seems to be proving sort of a difficult challenge. Let me give you a scenario, Emma and John. Let's say you are a member of a community group, or indeed you work for a council working with community groups who are trying to find sort of viable ways to get a community trail or access to green space locally, because at the moment they're having to travel, quite a distance to go somewhere for a safe walk. What would be sort of their first steps in terms of using the map viewer and the dashboard to kind of pull together some interesting stats and I suppose a bit of a business case, and how they could identify potential land nearby and landowners that they could work with and to potentially put something near that community?
I think the example that John showed there is probably the best approach for something like that. The dashboard is a good port of call maybe to go first, just to look at some statistics, some figures. You can look at the distance of trail within an area or the amount of green space within an area, to get those on the ground figures. Once you have that data, the map here is your best bet to get some actual on the ground information and add some extra data in. The dashboard doesn't have that function, whereas the map viewer does. And as John had showed, it also lets you add in or draw in different layers. So you could draw a line, maybe a line of best fit between a group of houses and a potential green space, and create the outputs, as John had shown, to create that business case for any potential infrastructure that might be required.
John, do you have anything in addition to add in terms of sort of simple steps that people can follow?
I think it's probably a combination of maybe the higher level data sets, like the demographics, maybe to show need in the area, proximity in the area, and then maybe, you know, any local data sets that are available, even, you know, existing trail usage or things like that. Usage information is fantastic from trail counters that could be added in as well to supplement things down at sort of the lower level as well. Yeah.
Okay, fab. If anybody has got any more questions, I suppose now is the time to quickly raise your hand or put them into the chat pane. Looking at the delegate list, I think some of the attendees might also be interested in our upcoming session, which is more advanced. It is actually for those who have got GIS experience. Emma, do you want to just say a little about what to expect and when information will be released on that training session?
Yep, so we're just finalising our agenda at the minute. John and I are hopefully going to get that rounded off this week. But it will, as Elizabeth has said, be more focused to those who have knowledge of GIS and specifically who have access to GIS. It'll be more into using it within ArcGIS Online, so how you can use the layers within your own GIS system, and as well how you can help us to enhance the layers. We have edit layers that we've created, which will allow other GIS users to add data in to these layers through a different feedback system. So we'll be covering those sorts of things within the next training session. So hopefully within the next week or so, we'll have some information out about that.
Thank you, Emma. And Maya, Taylor, you have just preempted my next slide. So hopefully you can see that coming up. So what to look out for in terms of what's next for GreenspaceNI Map? Well, we're going to keep on providing you with training on how to carry out analysis and output. So this is our beginner session. As I say, this will be recorded, put onto the website so you can go back or you can share it with others. And we will have a more advanced training session coming up in a couple of weeks. And we will be supplying all our data suppliers with access to ArcGIS, and that will just allow them to learn more about how they can input data. So this is a key thing I think we're taking away from today, is that while this is a fabulous resource, it will be much better as we add more and more data into, particularly accurate data and really valuable data. So that's really where we want your feedback and your help with going forward. So we'll be working with our data suppliers and asset holders to do that. And again, we will provide training in terms of helping you analyse the impact of green space and trails. So again, this map is a really wonderful tool to sort of help understand the benefits of green space and trails to Northern Ireland. And then going forward, lots of really important data for us to add to this map. So as Emma has mentioned, you know, having access points for all our green spaces and all our trails. So there's quite a bit of work to do there. I don't think it's fair to put it all down to Emma to do. So again, we're wanting a partnership with our data suppliers and asset holders for that. And then we'll be adding in our blue space layer, because I suppose while it's called the GreenspaceNI Map, of course, there are beautiful green spaces around Northern Ireland that also provide public access. So we'll be adding in those in the coming months as well. And then a bigger piece of work going forward in the next couple of years is around trying to add in data around the quality of our green spaces and the accessibility. So while at the moment the map speaks quite clearly to the quantity of green space, it actually doesn't say that much at the moment in terms of the quality of those individual assets. And so we will be working to provide a framework and I suppose sort of a guide and principles to help us score the quality of green spaces, and then putting that into the map as well. And again, that just helps us understand which areas have good quality green space and which ones don't, and therefore where should the investment go. So there's lots of exciting things that will be happening with GreenspaceNI Map. So do keep your eyes peeled. Do make sure that you're subscribed to the Outdoor Recreation NI Easy, because that's where the updates will be communicated through, and we will keep you abreast of progress. We have a final question from Adele. Will there be any written how-to guides for using the system. Emma, you spent lots of hours on this.
I did, yes. Maybe Elizabeth, if you go to your final slide, if you visit our website, we have a page for Greenspace within that, and in there is some product overview for the GreenspaceNI Map, a bit more information about how it was all created, as well as the metadata for all of the layers, and user guides for both the dashboard and the map viewer that, as Elizabeth said, I spent a long time creating. So if you want some light reading, they're there and available for you.
Thank you. John, do you have anything else to offer in terms of guides and how people can kind of get to know how to use the map view and the dashboard better?
Hopefully, with the collateral Emma was talking about in the video, that should be it. But I mean, feel free to contact us anytime. Basically, yeah, we're keen to keep improving it, enhancing it, and I think I'm loving all the ideas coming through and the feedback. So, I mean, that's what's going to see it used and successful, is that we keep changing it and making it relevant.
Emma, I'm sure everybody has your email address on this call, given the amount of communication that you've had with most stakeholders. But maybe if you just drop your email address into the chat pane just before people start leaving the call, and then that way they can follow up with you if there's anything they want to add or any additions they would like to see made. But I think that's all for this training session. Can I just thank everybody for joining us? We hope you found that really, really useful. And in particular, can I thank John and Emma for all their work on this. And thank you for your time this morning and explaining how people can use the map viewer and the dashboard to their full potential. And hopefully we'll see some of you at the advanced session. If not, we will probably see you at future events that we'll be rolling out both in person and online. But for now, thank you, and we'll see you again.